Viewpoint, the program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Say, we've been off the air for a little while.
I wonder if they noticed.
Well, yes. I was told by Mr. Ash that he was inundated with calls, one call, that would be, as to what happened to Viewpoint last week.
Jim, did your mother tell you that when you lie, you get pimples?
Yeah.
It's a time-honored thing, and you mustn't do that anymore. That's naughty.
Well, it has been a little while since Viewpoint's been on the air, and
well, the nice lady at the bank noticed.
yes, I had a couple people ask me. Those are folks in the old folks' home, and they hang on every word that you and I say because it's the only thing they've got going for them all day.
Well, I guess, yeah, it's a matter of the time you have to listen.
Well, in any event, go ahead.
Well, I couldn't have been here 2 weeks ago anyway. I was so sick. I had all that and pink eye because my little great-grandson, Liam the Loud, came home. He's just one, and he came home from daycare with the pink eye. So, of course, I had that too, and you wouldn't want it, Jim, so you'd be grateful I wasn't here.
No, she was. I thought we were going to have to put her down there for a couple of days. She was so bad. Well, listen, we've got a very fine young guest this morning, and we have an important subject. Quick kudo. I understand our Lincoln Revelers won down there at the Collinsville tournament. Again, repeating back-to-back. So that's quite an accomplishment.
Good.
And you've got some Hilltoppers that have done very well over there, Tom.
Yeah, they've surprised a few people, I think. I haven't kept up with them too much, but I saw they finished third in the St. Teresa tournament where they were picked the 8th seed, so that's good to see.
Well, year in, year out, I remember, before we get in the official introduction,
Okay.
when I was a kid in school, the Mount Pulaski-Lincoln rivalry was a big-time thing, Tom.
Yes.
And I remember when your father was playing, the Hilltoppers would beat Lincoln.
Yeah, for a lot of years, I think it was very highly competitive until it got into into the 60s and 70s, and I think it ended in 73 when I was in school, but it was very competitive, and there was a big rivalry where
Right.
I think there's still some feelings between both towns, which is always amazing to see how people took it so serious.
Well, why don't you get into official business and introduce our guest officially here?
Yeah, I'd like to do that. And Tom Martin is the head of the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation, and they have a big job set up for them. They are a 501c3 outfit. So if you're quick, you could get a check to Tom today, and he could get it to the bank, and you'd get a deduction.
Yeah, I think if you just wrote out the check and I didn't get to the bank, you can still get the deduction.
Right. Still get the, yes. You wouldn't have to get to the bank.
So, yeah, you've got, we'll try and give that information out, and if you're looking for a worthy charity that could help locally, help our tourism and help the Lincoln legacy, it'd be a terrific place to give a donation.
Well, I understand that your goal that you've set for yourselves is $1 million. You know that my house was built in 1924, and your courthouse was built quite a while before that.
Yes.
And I know that as these buildings get older, they take lots of upkeep. It's just kind of like kids. It's not the initial cost, it's the upkeep.
Right. And let me give you just a little bit of the background so that number doesn't overwhelm people too much.
It has a tendency to overwhelm
It does.
people.
And when you
not
live
if you live in an older home, it doesn't overwhelm.
You don't. But when you live in a small community, when you throw out a number like that, people take a step back and go, what are you thinking about? Mm-hmm. And so what we want to make sure people understand is we were established in 2011 with our basic premise was we knew the state, which owns the courthouse, had difficulty in maintaining and keeping it open. As a matter of fact, volunteers in Mount Pulaski have kept it open since 1992, actually.
Uh-huh.
Is that
it has not officially been open without volunteers since that time period. And a lot of things, structural-wise, were occurring with the courthouse, and we knew or realized that the state was not going to be able to keep up with taking care of it. So we established our foundation in 2011, basically to help promote tourism, to educate people, to sustain Lincoln's legacy, but also to maintain the integrity of the building, which was starting to fail. And the citizens of Mount Pulaski, it's ultimately our responsibility. Our ancestors built the building in 1847. And when we're there, we see what's happening to it. We took it upon ourselves, saying it is our ultimate responsibility to make sure that courthouse is taken care of. And so what happened is, for 3 years, we fixed windows, we replaced doors, we did a lot of the small things that could be done. And last year in 2014, Rosalie and Waldo Bertoni left an estate, part of their estate to us of $250,000.
Oh, bless.
So what happened was, with the money that we had already raised, to put us up over $300,000, and our board said if we're ever going to move forward, and instead of just piecemeal this courthouse, we said we have momentum, we have a terrific nest egg. Why don't we try and work with the state of Illinois and the Illinois Historic Preservation Agency and see if we can do a total renovation of the courthouse in one felt swoop, because it saves money in the long run because we're not redoing anything, and we can do a much better job with a total renovation. So what we decided to do was have, in 2015, we established a program called Abe's Million, to where we're going to try and raise $1 million, of which we already have a little over 300. But we're not just looking at our community and our county. We think this is a national treasure to our country. We think Abraham Lincoln is known around the world. We're reaching out to people around the world to help raise this money to protect this, what we consider a national treasure, especially for our county.
It is a national treasure. There's no question about that. But you speak to the structural integrity of the building. You had an engineer or somebody who's an expert go through your building over there.
Right.
Our building, you might say.
Exactly.
And I think you can say that in that term. It is ours, but more principally, it's Vinegar Hill's gem.
Right.
And you have a lot of folks that come over there and see this museum, and it's amazing the mystique of the Route 66 and the Lincoln thing. You get a lot of tourists over there.
Right.
But the point I just tried to address, I got too mouthy, is that you had this, somebody inspected the structural integrity of that building.
Well, that was the other piece of the puzzle that led us to saying we can't sit back and just fix a window here and a door. What happened is one of our foundation board members about 6 months ago noticed a crack in the ceiling of the courtroom, and upon further investigation of that crack, we found that there was a broken beam. The structural integrity of basically the roof was failing, or had the potential to fail at any moment. So we noticed that crack. We had IHPA come up. We got up there with the engineers and the architects and found a beam completely busted, and one section of the structure that holds up the roof was basically starting to fail and was pushing down on the ceiling. Because of that, we thought it was our responsibility, since we knew that was the problem, of saying we have to get this fixed immediately. We don't know if the state can appropriate the funds for that. So we need to begin. This was after we'd already said we're going to raise $1 million, but it became a necessity to move forward quickly. We just we'll get a final assessment on the actual roof and the structural integrity and the beams in about 2 weeks. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be about a $210,000 project, of which we don't know if we can appropriate any funds from the state. So it's made it a little bit more critical that we move forward with this, and our foundation board is going to make some of those decisions. If we think the roof could fail, then we're going to have to come up with those funds as soon as we can to help fix that.
Are there any other courthouses in the 8th Judicial Circuit, what was the 8th, that are still operational or still standing where they were built?
Right. There's 2 originals. One is in Eureka and one is in Mount Pulaski, that are original courthouses. The Eureka one, and there is a difference between the two. Mount Pulaski's is set up to resemble the way it was as a courthouse during that era when it was serving as a courthouse. The one in Eureka, the first floor, I believe, is a museum. And so when you walk into that, you see the museum, and then the upstairs is like the courthouse. But Mount Pulaski's is the only one, when you talk to Guy Fraker and a lot of the historians, it's the one courthouse you can walk into and actually feel like you're back in that era of when Abraham Lincoln served as a lawyer there.
Yeah.
So, but there were two originals, and I know there are some other courthouses around, but they aren't originals.
You know, I sat there, and you had your meeting a couple of weeks ago, and I sat there. And by the way, you had a nice turnout.
Terrific turnout.
Yes, it was a great turnout. And Bill Thomas was there. Bill's, of course, very involved with the tourism in this area. But I sat there, Tom, and reflected upon. I looked at those floors. That's the original flooring in that room, and you stop and think that old Abe trod those very floors.
Right.
And there's a certain kind of a mystique about that.
There is truly a mystique, and we recognize that because we've lived it. We live around here.
Yes.
Logan County, it's a huge part of our history. But every year that goes by, Abraham Lincoln and his legacy becomes more and more important to people around the world. And so I think, along with you and many others in our county, we view that as being our responsibility to make sure we maintain that legacy for the next generation, for the generations to come. You can't let these old buildings, you can't let those stories disappear, and it's up to us to be able to take care of that. Somebody did it before us. We have a responsibility. I looked and saw in our last red book, our history book of Mount Pulaski, they talked about my great-great-grandfather was the one who hauled the bricks uptown from a brickyard to help build that building. Well, many different families all had a part in taking care of that. And I think that we, not only the responsibility we have to the future generations, but also to those who came before us to maintain and make sure those stories live and that legacy lives.
You know, you missed your great-great-grandfather, which prompted me to think in terms of the three Harrys in your life. I found a few left that know that.
That's
that
why
connection.
I enjoy our conversation so much.
We have his father, Harry Jr., and his grandfather, Harry, and his maternal grandfather, H.J. Harry Weibel, who published the Mount Pulaski Times-News forever, and was a huge motivator and tour de force in encouraging people to take care of their own hometown.
Right. And you know, it's one thing we've tried to teach our children, Cheryl and I, is that you have to give back to your community. I mean, a full life is all about working and family, but also giving back somehow. And to be honest with you, my first memories is with Grandpa Weibel. Christmas Eve, would go up on the courthouse square. We used to have all these little Christmas trees, going down to the bank basement, getting light bulbs and replacing a whole bunch of light bulbs on the Christmas trees on the courthouse lawn. I learned from him and from my mother and father about what it's like and what is your responsibility to give back to your community and make it a better place to live.
Well,
does it ever frighten you that I'm afraid that with the passing generations we aren't exhibiting the interest and the vigor that we've been discussing here?
Yeah, there's times, but I think they're going to surprise us. I think
hope
they probably
you're right.
said I think they said the same thing about my generation. Probably, you know, there's a certain time in your life that isn't a priority. But I think if we continue to tell the story and show in our actions how you're supposed to treat your community, what you're supposed to give back, I think they're actually seeing that and learning it. And when the time comes, I think they'll be there.
They'll step up to the plate.
Yes, they will.
Well, Judith and I talk often about these small communities surrounding Lincoln, the Mount Pulaskis and the Elkharts and the folks up here in Atlanta, to name just three immediately. They're always a hardcore group of folks who are movers and shakers and want to keep the continuity of their communities going.
Right. Well, you take a look at even the smaller communities. What I get into, you know, everybody's the next line down. Yeah. Mount Pulaski's small to Lincoln and Atlanta, but then there's Chestnut and Elkhart and Latham. Yeah. And all these communities who, if you go to their communities and get into their cafes and meet the people, there's the same pride there as what there is in the larger communities. And one of the exciting things I see that's happening right now is, and we've talked about it for years, but we're starting to look at it as more of a county and collaborating in our efforts, and it's probably been one of the most frustrating things I've dealt with as being someone who's wanted to promote my community and promote the county, that sometimes we get back to those rivalry days of basketball days and this and that, and we tend to look upon those around us as, they don't have anything to offer. But with Bill Thomas and the new the tourism group beginning in the county in Lincoln and the economic development, I think we're starting to look at it as a whole unit and how we can all, support one another, and we can be better for that. So I'm encouraged by what I see coming down the road.
No man is an island, and neither is any single community.
Right.
I note that you still the courthouse is still open for tours.
Right.
And Tuesday and Saturday from noon until 4 p.m.
Right.
That's pretty remarkable because that means that you have to have a volunteer,
right,
or plural, but at least one person to do so. So that in and of itself is a commitment by somebody's to see that's manned.
Right.
That's 4 days a week.
Right. I mean, we have truly been blessed. You go back to 1992, and a lot of those original volunteers are now gone, have passed on, so there's always a new group moving in. Some of the continuity we've had, though, is because of Wally Couts, who was our site superintendent. I think Wally's been there probably about 18 years as the volunteer site superintendent. IHPA basically helps compensate him a little bit for his time, but Wally's been huge in having that continuity there and having the new volunteers flow through. And the city of Mount Pulaski helps there. They support that, support those volunteers. But we've been very, very blessed to have it open. The one thing we don't do, we've looked at just keeping the doors open. What our hope is with the foundation is to support that group of volunteers and try and promote ourselves a lot more, let people know that we're here, and work with Route 66, work with Logan County Tourism, work with Looking for Lincoln, IHPA, all of our partners out there to try and make a collaborative effort to try and bring people not only to Mount Pulaski but to all of Logan County, and hopefully they'll stay here for 2 or 3 days, take in all the sites and not just come into one place and move on.
I noted that with the courthouse being open Tuesday through Saturday, that gives pretty much an opportunity for people to come in there and inspect that. If you haven't been to it, there are a lot of folks right here in Lincoln, who we drive by and say, "Oh, that's interesting."
Right.
But to go inside it and look around and see the artifacts that are in there of that era, here we again a treasure right in our own backyard.
Right, and I have a feeling there's many of those, and that's why maybe we need to look within a little bit and make sure that everybody in the county, all our residents, know what's within the county first, and self-promote ourselves a little bit. So,
well, we're going to take just a minute. We're going to have more commercials about the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation.
Okay.
But we're going to take a minute now and recommend our sponsors for today. Go ahead. And we're right back here live in the studio. The program is Viewpoint. Our guest this morning is a young fellow who's been very, very, very much involved in Mount Pulaski and what's going on over there, and the history of Mount Pulaski and the future of the history of Mount Pulaski. So Tom Martin is chairman of the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation, a very important organization that whose goal is to save that architectural gem, which is an old courthouse where Abraham Lincoln practiced law. And so it's so vitally important to the community. Tom, with your foundation, this, by the way, once again, I want to emphasize, it's not December. It's December 31st, but it's not midnight yet. So if somebody's so motivated, they could even make a check today to the Mount Pulaski Courthouse Foundation. Tom, go ahead, tell us about your goals and how you intend to implement your programming and so forth.
Right. The process basically starts, we're kicking off in 2015 to raise the funds, to raise the additional monies up to get us $1 million. But that is going to continue into 2016, and it's open-ended right now until we can raise the funds. We hope that construction The roof construction, the actual structural damage is in place right now. That's been set in motion. We hope to start those repairs April of 2015.
Yes.
But that kind of moved up the schedule on us really quick.
Necessity. You have
On
to do
necessity,
that, yeah,
right. They
It's not
basically,
something that
the
you're
state
doing.
came in and declared it critical, and because of that, they were able to expedite the process, of which we've all been part of sometimes in a state process. It takes months and years sometimes. But our hope is that we can move that forward up until April and May and get that work done then. But the rest of the repairs that need to be done, and it's basically electrical, it's our brickwork. That building was built with soft bricks, and the last time they renovated it, they painted it with a sealer type paint that keeps all the moisture inside. And I know, Bill, you were in it. It is. It does not breathe. And what's happened, we want to fix the plaster, we want to repaint, but we can't do any of that until we fix the problem. So another big, besides the roof and the structure, it's the paint needs to be removed and it needs to be repainted. So then we can do all the work on the inside, the electrical work, the plaster work, those type of things, but we can't do it until the problem is fixed.
How in the world do you remove that paint?
Yeah, you'd have to talk to
That's going
the
to be
state
a
of Illinois, but they're going
process.
to come in, they have to save it all, they have to, and not have any disposal of it. They have to dispose it on a toxic waste dump because it's lead-based.
Yeah.
So it's a huge process, of which, fortunately, IHPA, the Illinois Historical Preservation Agency, is standing by our side when we're trying to raise the monies, and they're also coming and saying, okay, let's get this done, because they see an opportunity to help us and partner with us and do this work. So
Partner with us to the extent where they're going to kick in some bucks?
Here's the game plan. And this is always has an asterisk next to it when you talk about it, because things change. But we have told them we will commit to them $750,000. If the project costs over and above that, say 1.3, 1.4, they have said they will come in and pick up the remainder of the cost over and above the $750,000. But we always stand and know that could change, and so what our goal is to raise the money, and then we have to prioritize the work that has to be done in case they aren't able to come in with any additional monies. Okay, so but if it went to 1.2 and they could stand behind their commitment, then we could take care of everything over maybe a 6 to 8 month renovation where we'd have to close the courthouse. But we could do a very good job, and we wouldn't have to worry about our courthouse for many years to come. But we're trying to raise the monies in 2015 going into 2016 with then the work to begin the summer of probably 2016 if everything would stay on schedule. And a lot of this is going to be through grassroots, making connections, working with like you, Bill, Judy, and saying, help us connect to people that can help raise the monies that we need. Our goal right now is to have 100 people give $5,000 apiece from around the state, the country, the world. That raises us $500,000. Then we want 100 people to give $1,000. All right, that's another $100,000. The remaining 150 balance of that, which we're trying to raise, would then come from smaller donations and also grant monies that we have been writing grants for and trying to receive. So we kind of have a game plan of the presidential level is trying to raise $500,000 at $5,000 donations, and the cabinet level is basically $100,000 with $1,000 donations, and then below that we're trying to raise the remainder of the $150,000. But what we want to do is go out into people's homes, and like say you would have a group of maybe 10 people come in. I would come and I'd tell you exactly what's going on, answer any questions, and right up front, you're going to know I want you to bring your checkbook to these get-togethers. But we're coming out and trying to explain who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, and reach out to those people who have an interest in helping preserve that courthouse.
So you're fine-tuning, for want of a better word, a list of, again, for want of a better word, suspects.
Yes.
Who might be disposed to help on this very, very, very important project to save something of such historical significance in our community.
Right. We think it's our job to bring awareness to those people who have an interest. So that's what we're trying to do. Reach out to not only individuals, but like the Lincoln Academy, the Lincoln Association, the State of Illinois Lawyers Association, people who have a definite interest in keeping Lincoln's legacy and Lincoln's historic buildings and aspect in our state of Illinois. Keep that and move it forward. And so we know we have to target certain people, and that's what we're trying to do. But we're also having concerts. We're having fundraisers within the town of Mount Pulaski the whole year of 2015, and we're just now getting that schedule out to where we want people to come to the community, experience the courthouse, experience our community, and at the same time help us raise funds for this.
You know, this has not a thing to do with fundraising per se, but tonight you're going to have a very interesting ceremony. It's an annual event over there. So let's speak to that, Mr. Martin.
I appreciate you mentioning that, Bill. In 2011, on our 175th anniversary, Mount Pulaski's anniversary, we started an event on New Year's Eve of reading the names of those people who had passed during the year. And this year, it would be all those who've passed on in the year 2014. And the thought behind that was we're so caught up in our lives, day-to-day lives, and we move forward. And what happened maybe a year ago, we want to remember those people who have been such an integral part of our community and the surrounding area. They help build our community. They help make it what it is. And so what we do is we read the names, and then we toll the old courthouse bell on the courthouse square, and we read each name. The families come, and it's a very somber ceremony. We don't do anything else but do that. But we read those names so we can all remember those people who were such a part of our lives and part of our community. And it's really been, it's just one thing that I don't really want to not be a part of. I really enjoy being there and remembering all these people that were a part of my life.
That is so great. That's just a little microcosm of small town life.
Right. And that's what our foundation's trying to be. When we establish ourselves, we want to make the courthouse and the courthouse square part of the community again. It used to be the center always of the community, and it kind of got away from that, and it was just that historic site, like you say, that you drive by. Our foundation board and our citizens are trying to make it kind of the part and center of our community again, and we're trying to reach out and do those kind of things that make our community a better place.
Beautiful.
What time does this take place tonight, Tom?
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock on the courthouse lawn. We will read the names, and it only takes about 20 minutes or so.
Bundle up.
Pardon?
Bundle up and come and enjoy that.
Yeah. It makes you sit back and reflect a little bit on who you are and where you came from a little bit, I think.
Well, I'm sure that all the families must appreciate that immensely.
Yeah, it's like I say, I mean, we do it for the community to remember those people, but for those families, it's a very special time, and I know most are all very appreciative of that and always come up and have a kind word to say to us about it.
Beautiful.
Right.
You know, I noted, Tom, last night I decided I'd do a little research, and I Googled up your website over there.
Yeah.
That's a nice little website that Mount Pulaski has. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I do. First of all, I'll let you know what the website is. It's www.mountpulaskihistoriccourthouse.org. And if you go there, you'll get all the information that I've tried to spill out today and probably didn't cover a lot of things. Our foundation board established this. We have some terrific young people on our foundation board. We've tried to reach out to that younger set to come up because we want it to be such a part of the community and with the children and families again. Renee Martin, who's a niece of mine, I was able to pull her in about a year and a half ago. Renee did all the work on this website herself and was able to put it all together. And if you take a look at it, we're trying to be very professional, and she did just a marvelous job on this. And again, that's www.mountpulaskihistoriccourthouse.org. You can go there and get all the information about our program and about the courthouse. And actually, Bill, we talked about donations before. You can go right there and hit donate and make a donation right there, and probably get a receipt out, and you'll be able to get your donation in before the end of the year right on our website.
How easy can that be?
Yeah, really.
Right. It's terrific.
Anything from 10,000 up.
Right. Plus, you can give us feedback. We want feedback from people. You know, when you get in a small room with one group of people, sometimes your ideas aren't as widespread, and of what you want them to be. We want input. We want feedback. Tell us what you want us to do. Tell us how we can do it better. And there's a place there besides donating. You just also go there and let us know what you're thinking.
648-5510. Somebody might have a question or a comment about this project over here in Vinegar Hill. Let's just address that for a minute.
Okay.
The history of the term Vinegar Hill.
Oh boy, yeah. And we touch on that every once in a while.
Yeah.
I'm probably not the perfect person, but I can give you some feedback on it. The feedback
from
is
one side.
during the temperance movements. Basically, it wasn't necessarily prohibition yet. It was early on. When the temperance movements were moving forward all over the countryside and in this that, and all these little communities were banning alcohol. Well, the temperance movement didn't take hold, didn't take a foot in Mount Pulaski at all. And so all the taverns and all the breweries would open a tavern in Mount Pulaski. And the way I understand it, we had about 18 saloons on our square.
Think of that.
And so the Peoria, Springfield, Decatur breweries did all bring their alcohol to Mount Pulaski. On Saturdays, the trains would come from Decatur, Springfield, Peoria, everywhere, loaded with the men on box cars, on flat cars, and they'd all bring their bottles, come out Pulaski for the day on Saturday, fill up all their bottles, drink all day, fill up their bottles, and head home. Well, and it is, I guess, it's fact that the conductor, when they got close to Mount Pulaski, would yell out Vinegar Hill instead of Mount Pulaski, and so we became known as Vinegar Hill, as one of the last places you could come and get alcohol to drink.
Did they label things vinegar? Is that it?
Yeah, no, possibly. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about that. It could be. But when Prohibition then
It's a great legend.
came, then we got shut down too. But we were one of the last ones in Central Illinois to actually have that beverage available to those who wanted it.
Well, per capita, they probably had more drinking establishments than anywhere else in the area.
And if you go back in history, a lot of fortunes were made by a lot of local people because of that.
Well, sure. If you've got people coming from all these other bigger towns
Right.
to spend the day.
I always thought it was a quaint name, but anybody around here hears the term Vinegar Hill, they knew immediately it's that wonderful little place up there on the higher ground over there.
It's a great part of our history. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. You have started your foundation, but you've got the genesis of the way it's going to operate and so on. But you're really going to start in this next calendar year, to get things moving on that.
Right. Yeah. Our foundation, it takes a while to get up and moving, and we kind of had a game plan. When we'd raise 70 to 100,000, we thought that was terrific. But once the endowment came in from the Bertones, it let us focus and say we can take these monies and leverage those monies, along with the state of Illinois, with grant monies and with other individuals. And now in 2015 is the real kickoff for trying to raise that $1 million and really do a job. Once you have momentum, we're afraid we're going to lose some of that momentum, and that's inevitable sometimes with the change in foundation members, with the change in what's going on. We have momentum. We have the support of our community. The children, the community, a lot of businesses have supported us wholeheartedly for 3 years already. For us to already raise $100,000 on our own, to me, that's tremendous. But it gives us that ability to say, now let's take a look at the bigger picture and try and do even a bigger job and take care of this whole courthouse.
Well, bottom line on this whole project is, if everybody just kind of say, "Oh, isn't that nice?" and walked by it or drove by it and did nothing about it, ultimately down the road, this treasure would not be standing there. It would ultimately just deteriorate to the point where it's not usable.
Right, and that's why I think 3 years ago we made the decision that we have to take it in our own hands. The courthouse belongs to everyone. But it means something different to those people who drive by it every day and have history with it. It is our community. So for us not to pay attention and bring that concern to everyone's attention would be irresponsible of us. I mean, if we know there's a problem and we don't do anything about it, and if we can't raise the monies, then we'll take care of the most critical issues and we'll save that building. I mean, we may not be to the complete renovation that we'd like it to be, but we'll make sure that building's going to be standing and not deteriorating. But we felt it was just irresponsible of us, if we know that there is a problem, not to bring it to everybody's attention.
Well, you can't just ignore that roof business.
Right. The problem was nobody had discovered it until we discovered it and brought it to the attention of the state of Illinois. And that's the problem, that they have their hands full. I mean, they're trying to do more with less all the time. I understand that. So sooner or later you go, quit blaming people, take it in your own hands. And so that's what the citizens of Mount Pulaski decided to do.
Happily for this project, it isn't just the enthusiasm and the interest and the hard work of Tom Martin. You have a really good, hardcore committee that's working on this. You've got some great people that are very involved in this thing.
Right. Our board is terrific, but it's not just our board. We represent the citizens of Mount Pulaski and Logan County. The citizens and the businesses have just been wholeheartedly behind us the whole time. We have a lot of trusts there that have helped us with monies when we reach out to them. So it's the whole community that's kind of taken a step forward and said, to the best of our abilities, we will preserve this courthouse.
And bottom line, for the community, for the county as a whole, there's a bottom line in that when tourists come to Vinegar Hill, or Mount Pulaski, they spend a good money in the community, and that turns over. So there's an economic factor that's not very small, by the by. Right.
Phase 1, we've been basically talking about our phase 1 today, and that's basically renovating the courthouse. Phase 2 for us then is moving forward and is all about economic development. We're hoping to possibly buy a couple buildings uptown, create like a children's museum or a place where it can be an interactive area. The courthouse maintains its historic presence. We can't change that. We don't want to change that. But we add on, and if we can develop our square a little bit more, it's good for all our businesses. It's good for the people in the community. It's good for the county. Now we have something that besides Atlanta, Elkhart, Chestnut, Lincoln, that people go to. They can come to Mount Pulaski, maybe spend half a day, eat in the restaurants, come back, stay in the hotels in Lincoln. It's all part of the big picture, and we understand that it can't just be about preservation. It has to be about economic development if we're really going to get the biggest bang for our buck in our own community and in the county.
It's interesting. You mentioned Waldo and Rosalie. Judith and I talk about the draw, the magnetism of our small communities. Now, there's a couple who could have dropped anchor anywhere after they retired, and they chose to come back, as did their nephew Phil and Jenny. Come back, and they just didn't come back. They became involved, and Phil and Jenny have done the same thing in what's going on in the community to promote the community.
And what they do, first of all, on the personal standpoint, to get to know Waldo and Rosalie and Phil and Jenny again, and that's just a few of the people who have come back. To get to know them on a personal level was remarkable for me. They're very special people. What they do, though, they bring a perspective back to our little community. That's a kind of a world view. I mean, where they've been,
because they've been out in the world,
been out what they do, and they say now, I want to come back. I want to be part of this community, and they bring back a view and kind of a sense. Sometimes we have a kind of a small view when you haven't been outside your community, your borders, and to have them come back and give back of their time and know how important it is because it was their heritage. It kind of reinforces what you believe is important, and we have a lot of people like that. I think all our communities have people who come back because that history and the heritage is so important to them.
Before we close this morning, and we need to do that very shortly, we're going to bring Tom back next week. We're going to talk about a very, very important project that is under consideration here over in his neck of the woods in Logan County, the wind farms.
Yes.
Do you have a closing comment or two about that, and then we'll talk about the wind farms next Wednesday?
Yeah. Very briefly, we've been involved because it's going all around in our area in southern Logan County. We're basically surrounded by 80 turbines in about a 16 square mile area. I guess all I'd ask is I think people need to educate themselves a little bit on the ramifications and what's going on in a wind farm area. I know we have one in the county already, several proposed. There's always two sides of the story. There's a lot of information out there that is a gray area. I've spent the last 2 months, along with many others, trying to educate ourselves, and sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. it's a very new industries, relatively speaking. In this area, it's 10 to 15 years old. The more they come into the more populated areas, and the bigger the towers get, there's different effects that we're learning that wind farms can have on the residences in that area. And I just think what I'd ask the citizens of Logan County is just take a little bit of your time and educate yourself a little bit. This does affect us all, not just the people within the footprint.
Whether we live here several miles from it or not.
It doesn't. And they got a carrot hanging out there with the tax monies and the monies that come in, and that is important. I mean, I think we all understand that. But there has to be give and take. In any economic development, there's a downside a little bit, usually, the economic development, but there has to be a balance there. And we're just wanting to make sure that everybody educates themselves and make sure a development of this sort, there's the proper balance between the monies and the development coming in and the impact it has on the citizens of the county.
Well, thank you,
Wonderful.
Tom Martin. We appreciate your making a trip over here this morning from Mount Pulaski. Next week we will talk about that very thing, the wind farms. But the thrust today was talking about the necessity for saving that historical gym over there in the top of the hill, Mount Pulaski Courthouse. Venerated building where Abe Lincoln trod the floors several times, not just once in a while. Which brings us to a conclusion. I always try to close with some comment, and I found where old Abe said, and by the way, this might be pretty apropos today in today's times. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Ponder on that, folks. Thank you very much, Tom Martin. Thank you for Viewpoint.